you've been the one guy out there, saying that this is going to be happening because you're the one guy that's been still in contact with Bill, and you said there's going to be stuff in here that's going to, make some headlines, and you weren't wrong.
No, I mean, I knew, yeah. You guys have done a good job covering it. I appreciate Josh's excerpts. No, I knew it would cause a stir. I didn't even, some of it I didn't, but there's some parts of it that he didn't make me privy to in the last couple of years. Like, I wasn't privy to the Betty Ford situation that he had to go to Betty. They made him go to Betty administration, made him go to Betty Ford Clinic. I wasn't privy to that. I did not know until this book that contract extension given to Frost in 2009 was ramrodded through by Ronnie Green without Bill's knowledge. I had no idea about that.
And then it happened in September? Is that what he said after the Ohio State game or right before the Ohio State game?
That's what he said. I think Bill's wrong on that. I don't think it happened then. I think it didn't happen until closer to the Wisconsin game. But the fact remains that I don't want to get lost in all that because it doesn't matter as much as the fact he didn't know about it. He wasn't privy. And that's odd. All of that is very odd. And it's, the biggest takeaway for me is just the amount of meddling done by, we're talking about Ronnie Green, the chancellor, and the president, Hank Bounds, and then even the regent, Pillen. There's two sides. I've heard from a lot of people subsequent of all this, and you hear two sides to it that maybe there's some thought that they needed to, but I don't know. I'm not convinced of it. I just think there was too much meddling. That's whatever. I mean, it's water under the bridge.
What the Dana Altman stuff was, I think, 2 days later since we got it, that's the thing that I think is sticking with me the most. I mean, you just brought up a lot of good stuff in there as well. Mm-hmm. I'm like endlessly interested in why, like what the read on the situation from Pillen. And like, if anybody is wondering, that's just probably Bill over exaggerating. I don't know. I mean, Team Pillen putting out on Twitter what they did yesterday certainly tells me that there is more truth than fiction there. Do you have any idea? Like, what are we missing with them not wanting to even kick the tires on Dana Altman?
Well, there is stuff missing there. Now, here's the thing. The one thing I'm going to say about Moos, his appearance today on the radio here in Lincoln was great, and his book and the fact this is real stuff. He didn't make this stuff up. I've talked to enough people. There's some of it that's a little off, I think. I think the Altman part is really interesting, but it's nuanced, Josh. I hope you can follow me.
Yeah.
There's a part of me that thinks Bill was using Altman and the possibility of hiring Altman, or at least making it seem like there's a possibility to test how much power he had. I do believe it was real. I know it was, because I was back in that era. There was a time I was talking to somebody and I said, hey, I don't think I can do anything because I think Nebraska's getting ready to hire Altman. And I need to, one of my friends reminded me of that this week. He goes, you were telling me about that. And you said that Baz, the beat writer, was unavailable. And I got to kind of be around because I think they might be hiring Altman. So I had forgotten about that. But, okay, so bear with me.
Yeah.
I think that Hoiberg was basically if not hired, close to it at that time. I still believe that it might have been Moos testing how much power he had. I don't know, though. I mean, it's hard to say. He doesn't write it that way in any way. That's just I just know that Hoiberg was close. Like, if you remember back then, I was saying way out, they're going to hire Hoiberg. I was like a month. I was talking about it for a month. And I guess during that period, Altman's name cropped up, and there was some validity to it. But it illustrated, the bottom line is it once again illustrated a high level of, I call it meddling. Maybe that's a little strong. I think the whole theme of these conversations is that, though, and that how Moos they didn't really let him lead. I mean, and it illustrates that, I don't know, it was a fairly bizarre period.
It was, Sip, and it's bizarre to me that anyone would have any objection, I mean, to Dana at that point. I mean, and you got to put yourself in 2018, 2019, not 2025, 2026. 2018, 2019, Dana Altman's one of the top 5 basketball coaches in the country, or top 10, right?
Right.
His record is impeccable. He's at a great program who, and yet he is from here. And you already knew the priors. You knew that Altman had been interested in that job going back many, many years. But for a variety of different reasons, was never approached. But then for someone to say, oh, no, Nebraskans aren't going to accept him, I just is baffling to me. Anyone that could have that read on the situation does not have a good pulse, does not have a good firm grasp on the pulse of what was going on, because people would have gone nuts in excitement if Dana Altman would have come to Nebraska.
So there's that, and then there's just that. No, then just the whole picture of the chancellor and the regent pulling the AD into a room and saying you can't hire this person,
right?
And then the AD, the very savvy AD. But I mean, you can say everybody has their opinions on Moos. He's pretty polarizing. But the one thing that I would say about Moos is he's extremely savvy politically. Grew up, his dad was a politician, and Moos, I mean, he knows he can make his way through a political situation very well. And at Nebraska, you better be able to do that. By the way, that athletic department over the years has been, you better be politically savvy. I hate to say it. It's true, though. And that's a lot. I
was going to say, it's probably like that at every job, though, right?
You know what? Yes and no. No, Josh, I don't want to sign off on that. I've talked to enough administrators over the years. No, it's not like that all everywhere. I don't want to make that assumption. There's a lot of places where you don't have to look over your shoulder all the time, and that you can voice your opinion and not have to worry about it. Unfortunately, my read is Nebraska for much of the last 20, 25 years has not been that place. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot, come on, I'm not saying anything unique. We've talked about it ad nauseum. And this is sort of shining light on more of it, probably the most recent of it.
Yeah, so what are we to make? I guess, Sip, I've been trying to figure out the last 2 days, what are we to do with all of this information? Because as John and I went through on Monday, really nobody from this era is involved. I mean, Pillen's the governor, so he certainly, is here. But in terms of everybody else, they're all gone, right? Moos is gone. Ronnie Green is gone. Ted Carter is gone. And so there is this question of, wow, were things even more dysfunctional than we realized? But what does that mean for today? And what does it mean for tomorrow?
Well, you got to learn from it. I hope they've learned from it. I don't, like someone suggested to me now, well, there's solidarity now. I don't know. I thought there was solidarity then. I'm not.
I know. I was going to say the same thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah, we thought we'd gotten rid of the divisive thing before when Nyquist was gone and everyone was more aligned.
No, it was. Yeah, no, it was worse probably. And there's a couple of things that come to mind. I think it's positive in some ways. I mean, I think shining the light on that stuff, because you can learn from it. You really can. And I think that's valuable. I think it's also, now this is a separate thought, but the thing that you have to drive home is, so 2018, when they were pushing him to the Betty Ford clinic, and now people are probably saying it wasn't a good hire. Yeah, okay, maybe I'm not saying it wasn't a good hire, but there's people saying it then, there are people saying it now. And I would say to them, well, wait a second. Hank Bounds made the hire.
Yes.
He should, there's culpability there. And if they turned on Moos immediately, I don't like the look of that. They hired him. I mean, didn't you vet him? Mm-hmm. Was he not thoroughly vetted? Do you think all these issues, these alleged things that you hear about Moos just cropped up at Nebraska? I mean, he was an AD at Montana, at Oregon, at Washington State. and had a level of success, obviously, because he was able to keep getting jobs. And so all of the sudden, did Moos come to Nebraska and go bad? See, you get different opinions on that. That's the most interesting thing I've found in the last 2 days. I've had guys that worked in that department that firmly back him and say he was a great leader. Then there's guys that say, no, he's asking a lot. He couldn't reach him, etc. Sometimes you don't know who to believe. I would say this, though. My experience with Moos was 100% positive. I never had trouble getting a hold of Moos. When we set up an interview, he was ready to go. When if I had to call him impromptu, he'd answer the phone. He was. So I always have a sort of a hard time believing all of the negative I hear of it, and I 100% believe what he said because he's told me that. Not stuff in the book. I didn't know the stuff in the book while I was working with him, but for the last 2 years, as I've detailed on your show at times, he was telling me that stuff. So nothing that he really wrote surprised me except for those two things I identified.
Sip, did the anecdote about talking with Bob Bowlesby and trying to get back into the Big 12, did that lessen your estimation of his decision-making ability? Because that would have been one of the wackiest, most backwards moves this program could have ever made. It would
have been an emotional decision.
Yes, an emotional decision.
Not a financial one.
History tells us that. I mean, it wasn't Oklahoma and Texas still in that league, and I can't. I mean, I remember the murmurs at that time. It was COVID, and I think there was an afternoon where I was almost convinced I need to write about it. I'd heard enough, but I did not know at the time that he had met with Bob Bowlesby in Dallas. I didn't know it. That Ted Carter had signed, the president at the time had signed off on him looking into it. I did not know that stuff. I knew it from the level of Frost mentioned it to me one time that the Big 12, they might be in play, and I never could find anything on it. But there was an afternoon I remember where I thought, oh God, I think I'm going to be writing about this, but I couldn't get enough on it. Now, and I don't quite look at it like you, because I think you got to go back into that period. I think it's unfair to just say it's a stupid thing. It would be now. I mean, hindsight tells us it is, but at that very moment.
I mean, 6 months later, Texas and Oklahoma were gone, or at least announced it.
Were they gone?
Yeah, it was 2021 when we learned that they were leaving for the SEC.
Summer of 21.
And I would say it tugged my emotions. I don't like the Big Ten. I don't mind saying that. I don't. I love the Big 12. And so it didn't. Now I would tell you, I knew that there would be issues, and it would not be. Come on. I guess what I'm telling you is I didn't take it very seriously because what was nagging at me was they can't possibly do this. They can't leave the Big Ten. So maybe that's why I didn't take it seriously.
Sip, going back to the first time you ever wrote about this or that we talked about it with you on the show, I think you often mentioned, and he's going to write about the meeting in Philadelphia with Frost. And, that's, and so when we got the book, when we bought the book the other day, the first thing I did was I opened it up. I did Control F. I searched Frost because I wanted to read about that meeting. I wonder how you view that, because I think there is certainly a lot of people who are saying, wow, he is saying all of these things because he wants to show himself on the right side of history of like, look, I recognize something in Scott Frost that nobody else did, and I saw it literally before we even hired him. Shout out to me. On the other hand, I view that as almost a bit of a self-own where he admits, like, I had my questions about his hiring and I still did it. And I understand why, right? He writes about it. There's this pressure of he had to do it. But do you view it that way as well? It's like, yeah, congrats that you acknowledge that and you notice something in him. He shows up disheveled and all these things. You still hired him, though. And so I don't think that I guess I don't have a grander view of him than maybe he wanted people to have writing those words.
I look at it a little differently, Josh. I don't look at that as self-serving. I just think it was a revealing anecdote, and he didn't have a choice on who to hire. We all know that. I don't see. So that's where I disagree with you a little bit. when you say you hired him, well, yeah, who else was he got? I mean, come on. There's nobody else he could have hired that he would have got fired if he would have hired somebody else. There's one guy
Sure.
to hire. So I just thought it was revealing. I thought it was incredibly revealing. And that was his impression. And then on our show today, he was very fair-minded about it. He said this morning, Bill, that I believe that Frost should, he should be the Nebraska football coach, but not at that time. He wasn't ready. I think that's a very fair way to look at it. In fact, that echoes what Trev had said. I mean, in a sort of off-the-record sense, that there was an immaturity with Frost that manifested itself during that period. And he just maybe wasn't ready. Guys mature at different levels and at different times, and Frost probably wasn't ready for the job. But it wasn't like you, me, anybody in the media was saying, I don't know if Frost is ready. Nobody was saying that.
The only people saying that to me were behind the scenes, and they were former teammates of his.
Correct.
And they they didn't want to say it publicly.
And they just didn't. It was more.
They didn't want to deal with the backlash to it.
Right, and it kind of felt personal in that point.
Yes, it
versus
did.
actually knowing whether or not he was mature enough. And how interesting it is, Sip. Go back 15 years prior. Bo Pelini was a candidate when Frank got fired, but almost immediately Steve Peterson eliminated him because he wasn't mature enough.
Well,
and we all saw how that went, right? I mean,
right.
So you're damned if you do. Sometimes you're damned if you don't.
Yeah, I just thought. I didn't think of it as Moos being self-serving. I just thought it was shining a light on something. And I don't think it was him saying, see, I was right. I just think it was interesting. And he felt it was interesting, and he described it very well, that's the other thing about Moos is he is very descriptive in his writing. It's pretty provocative. And that's probably why we're talking about it. He details stuff very well, and it's interesting.
Sip, if we were to categorize that era of Nebraska athletics, and the meddling, the obstructionism, the ego that was in administration, and how things, if we were to grade that as, okay, that's a 10, just assuming that what Bill Moos is telling us, what we kind of all believe and know, if that is considered a 10, what would today be? Less than 10, right? Definitely less than 10, right?
Pause for a very simple reason. The one thing we don't acknowledge enough in these conversations is COVID. You throw that COVID wrench into all this, and it was weird. And trust me when I tell you, I covered it. I covered it daily. It was as weird as you could ever imagine. And if I ever wrote a book, I think you guys would be startled by the things I told you about what was going on during COVID.
Yeah.
In that program. It was, so I think with Frost, and I'm glad Bill's mentioned that on radio, mentioned it today. He got hit with that COVID period. And it was odd and challenging and unprecedented. And then, his dad died. That was not, that was all in that period. It was an exceptionally challenging period. I mean, there was a time where I thought, wow, Frost. Like Nebraska was sort of on the cutting edge early. They're going to practice. They're going to get a jump on everybody. They were doing extraordinary work with their testing, with the med center, and they were working with the med center, and it was very high end, and there was a lot of energy behind the scenes, a lot of energy, a lot of positive energy. Like, look, this is what we're doing this, and we're going to have an edge on everybody. And then it just didn't work. It got too weird, and but I don't know. COVID makes that impossible for me to answer. I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah,
Here, I'll just look quick devil's advocate. Moose thought he was going to get fired going into the third game of the season in 2018, and it was all about something else entirely, and he had to go to a clinic. So, like, I get what you're saying because COVID was wild, but like they had a lot of drama behind the scenes well before 2020.
That's true. He came out of that though, Josh. Like he came out of that early, those early issues.
Did he ever escape it?
Yeah, because it doesn't seem like it. Reading that chapter. I mean, he talks about they got a PI on me or whatever it was. Like he didn't seem to feel that way.
Probably didn't. No, I'd say never fully came out of it.
Yeah.
Again, though, I'm telling you, a lot of these. It kind of depends who you talk to when you talk about Moos. I told you what I thought, but you can find people that would take you on pretty hard, take me on pretty hard. I found him today. But my personal dealings with him, there was never once an issue. And in fact, I was always sort of amazed by what he would tell me and how much, I don't know, he seemed extraordinarily competent to me. But there was times where there's pretty compelling cases where he fell short in some areas.
Well, as I've said many times, we've never really gotten many great tell-alls about what has been just an incredible last 20 years of Nebraska athletics. Here is one person who has decided to speak up. And, yeah, you're going to get his side of the story, but it definitely sheds a light on something that a lot of people thought might have been true or hoped hadn't been true. And, again, it's one person's point of view.
Yeah.
You got to have others as well, but it's different in that this is kind of the first. We never got the Steve Peterson book, never got the Bill Callahan book, we never got the Bo Pelini, we never got any of that. Bo's podcast with the Bussin' with the Boys is about as close as we've gotten to like being inside the weirdness of the last 20 years.
Right. You'll notice there's something that I noticed in this with Moos. He's very confident in saying all this stuff. He doesn't hedge. If you listen to that interview today on our show in Lincoln, he's full of confidence. And it tells me that he feels good about the truth. And I don't think you'll hear from Hank Bounds. I mean, Hank Bounds hired him. I guarantee you won't hear from Ronnie Green.
Yeah, they're both gone. They're out of education altogether.
Yeah, I don't know how Pillen would handle it.
Well, we saw him.
He's got a lot on right now. I just don't know if he wants to delve into this part. But and what Moos said about Pillen isn't particularly damning, I don't think.
The basketball team's having their best year ever, so it's going to be hard to find too many.
It's only damning from the standpoint of not understanding how folks would react to one of the best basketball coaches in the country being it.
Correct.
It's not that big of it. It's not a great look for Nebraska. I don't think that they have those guys running the athletic department when you have an AD. But that's kind of the theme of it for me. The theme of the whole conversation.